The day began like any other, mundane and predictable, until it wasn't. I walked through the front door, expecting the familiar rhythm of our evenings. Dinner, maybe a show, the comforting monotony of married life. But the moment I crossed the threshold, something felt wrong. The air was thick with tension, and the music, loud, pulsing, almost aggressive, wasn't her usual choice. It wasn't the soft melodies she hummed along to while chopping vegetables or folding laundry. This was different. This was a warning. I dropped my bag by the door, my voice cutting through the noise as I called her name. Silence. No response, no footsteps, no sign of her. My pulse quickened as I moved through the house, drawn toward the bedroom like a moth to a flame. The closer I got, the heavier the air felt, saturated with the sharp tang of alcohol. It wasn't the faint trace of wine after a glass or two. This was something else, something reckless, something deliberate. When I pushed the door open, the scene hit me like a punch to the gut. She was lying on the bed, her body limp, one arm dangling over the edge. Her hair was a wild tangle, her face flushed, and her clothes, or lack thereof, told a story I wasn't ready to hear. Her coat was tossed carelessly on the floor, and she was wearing only a blouse, half unbuttoned, and a pair of tights. No skirt. No explanation. My mind raced, scrambling to make sense of what I was seeing. This wasn't her. This couldn't be her. She wouldn't come home like this. She wouldn't. But there she was, and the evidence was undeniable. My stomach churned as I fumbled for my phone, my hands trembling as I hit record. I didn't know why I was doing it. Maybe to prove to myself later that this wasn't some twisted dream. Maybe to hold on to something real in a moment that felt anything but. Then her phone buzzed. The sound was sharp, intrusive, pulling my attention to the nightstand. The screen lit up, casting a faint glow in the dim room. My heart hammered in my chest as I reached for it, my fingers hovering over the device. I knew what I was about to do would change everything. There was no going back. But I had to know. I had to see what was waiting for me on that screen. As I picked it up, a cold realization settled over me. This wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. She lay motionless, her breathing deep and rhythmic, as if the world hadn't just shattered around us. The room felt like a crime scene, and I was the detective piecing together a story I didn't want to believe. My mind raced, replaying moments I dismissed. Her late nights, the way she'd suddenly startle when I walked into the room, the way her phone always seemed to face down, as if hiding something. I'd told myself I was overthinking, that trust was the foundation of any marriage. But now, standing there, I realized trust had been a one-way street. My eyes locked onto her phone, still glowing faintly on the nightstand. My hand hesitated for a split second before I grabbed it. The screen lit up, and there it was, a flood of notifications. Missed calls. Messages. All from Kyle. The name burned into my mind like a brand. I opened the messages, my fingers trembling as I scrolled. Each word was a knife twisting deeper. You're all I think about. The words blurred as I read them, my vision narrowing to the screen. I took screenshot after screenshot, methodically transferring them to my own phone. It wasn't just about proof anymore. It was about survival. I needed something solid, something real to hold on to when the ground beneath me felt like it was crumbling. I placed her phone back on the nightstand, careful not to make a sound. My eyes drifted back to her, still asleep, still oblivious. The anger I expected didn't come. Instead, there was a cold, calculating clarity. This wasn't a one-time slip. This was deliberate. This was a pattern. And I had been blind to it for far too long. The room felt suffocating, the weight of what I'd discovered pressing down on me. I needed air. I needed to think. I grabbed my jacket and slipped out of the house, the night air hitting me like a slap. My mind was a whirlwind of questions, but one stood out above the rest. What now? As I walked, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting another screenshot, another reminder of what I'd lost. But it wasn't that. It was a message from an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it. "We need to talk. It's about your wife." The screen went dark, but the words lingered, sharp and unrelenting. I stared at my phone, my breath catching in my throat. This wasn't over. Not even close. And whoever was on the other end of that message knew more than I did. I clenched my phone tighter, the cold night air biting at my skin. The game had changed. And I was no longer just a player, I was the target. The moment I stepped out of the house, the cool night air hit me like a slap, jolting me back to reality. I couldn't stay there. Not with her, not in that house that suddenly felt like a stranger's. My mind was a storm of emotions, and I needed to get away, to think, to breathe. I grabbed my keys and headed to my friend's place, but as I turned to leave, I heard her. Her voice, slurred and heavy with alcohol, cut through the silence. She was mumbling at first, incoherent, but then it became clear. She was calling his name. Not mine. His. The sound of it sent a chill down my spine, and I froze, my hand tightening around my phone. I couldn't help myself. I started recording again, the camera capturing every word, every desperate plea for him. "Where are you?" she murmured, her voice cracking. "Don't leave me." I stood there, just outside the bedroom door, my heart pounding in my chest. The raw emotion in her voice was something I'd never heard before. Not with me, not in all the years we'd been together. It was like a knife twisting in my gut, but I couldn't look away. I couldn't stop listening. She shifted on the bed, her head turning slightly toward the door. For a moment, I thought she'd seen me, that she'd realize I was there, watching, recording. But her eyes were glazed, unfocused, and she slumped back into the pillows, her breathing slowing as she drifted off again. That was my cue to leave. I slipped out of the house, the weight of what I just witnessed pressing down on me like a lead blanket. The drive to my friend's place was a blur, my mind racing with questions I didn't have answers to. What had I just seen? What did it mean for us? For me. The next morning, I drove back home, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. The events of the night before played on a loop in my mind, each detail sharper, more painful than the last. I wasn't ready to face her, but I didn't have a choice. This wasn't something I could run from. When I walked through the front door, the smell of coffee hit me, warm and familiar. She was in the kitchen, sipping from her mug like nothing had happened. The sight of her there, so calm, so normal, made my stomach churn. "Morning," she said, her voice casual, almost dismissive. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I stood there, gathering my thoughts, trying to find the words to start this conversation. Finally, I spoke, my voice low and steady. "What happened last night?" She blinked, her expression shifting from surprise to defensiveness in an instant. "What are you talking about?" "You came home drunk, half-dressed, and calling out another man's name," I said, the words sharp and cutting. She set her coffee cup down, her movements deliberate, calculated. "You're overreacting," she said, her tone cool but edged with something I couldn't quite place. "It wasn't like that. I was celebrating with a client. We signed a major deal, and it was just a few drinks." I stared at her, my jaw tightening. "A few drinks," I said, my voice rising. "You were passed out on the bed, calling out Kyle's name. Explain that." Her face paled, but she recovered quickly, her mask slipping back into place. "Kyle's the client," she said, her voice rising to match mine. "We were celebrating. That's it. There's nothing else to it." I wanted to believe her, but the weight of what I knew made it impossible. Without a word, I pulled out my phone and showed her the screenshots of the messages. Her face froze as she read them, her eyes darting across the screen. Before she could respond, I played the video, the one where she was lying on the bed, slurring his name, begging for him. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I thought she might break. But instead, she clenched her jaw, her voice hardening. "I told you, it's not what you think. You're twisting this into something it's not. As she spoke, I noticed something that made my heart drop all over again. Her left hand, the one holding the coffee mug, was bare. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. She always wore it. Always. You're not even wearing your ring, I said, my voice barely more than a whisper. She glanced at her hand, her face unreadable. I took it off at the office yesterday. It got caught on something, she said quickly. Too quickly. But I wasn't buying it. The pieces were falling into place, and the picture they formed was unbearable. She wasn't just celebrating. She was pretending to be single in front of her client. I stared at her, my anger simmering just below the surface. You're lying, I said finally, the words heavy with certainty. Her silence was louder than any response she could have given. This is it, I said, my voice firm and steady. This is the end of our marriage. Her composure broke. Tears welled up in her eyes as she stepped toward me, hands outstretched. Please, she said, her voice trembling. It's not what you think. We can fix this. I'll do anything. Just don't give up on us. But her words fell flat. I shook my head, the weight of everything crushing any hope for reconciliation. There's nothing to fix, I said coldly. You made your choice, and I've made mine. This isn't worth fighting for anymore. She sobbed, pleading with me, but I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, no hope. Just emptiness. I turned and walked away, leaving her standing there in the kitchen, tears streaming down her face. This was the moment I knew there was no going back. As I stepped out into the daylight, my phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out, expecting another message from her, another plea for forgiveness. But it wasn't her. It was an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it. We need to talk. It's about your wife. The screen went dark, but the words lingered, sharp and unrelenting. I stared at my phone, my breath catching in my throat. This wasn't over. Not even close. And whoever was on the other end of that message knew more than I did. I clenched my phone tighter, the cold morning air biting at my skin. The game had changed. And I was no longer just a player. I was the target. The house felt like a stranger's when I walked back in, the air thick with unspoken words and unresolved tension. She was on the couch, curled into herself, her eyes fixed on the muted TV. The flickering light from the screen cast shadows across her face, highlighting the redness around her eyes and the tightness in her jaw. She looked broken, but I couldn't bring myself to care, not after what she'd done. When she noticed me, she straightened slightly, her voice cracking as she spoke. Where are you going? I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. Instead, I turned and headed for the bedroom, each step heavy with the weight of what I was about to do. The room was a minefield of memories. The bed was still unmade, the sheets tangled from where she'd passed out the night before. Her perfume lingered in the air, a sickening reminder of the life we'd shared, or the life I thought we'd shared. I grabbed a duffel bag from the closet and started shoving clothes into it, not bothering to fold them or think about what I might need. I just needed to get out. She didn't follow me. She didn't try to stop me. Maybe she knew it was pointless, or maybe she was too drained from our earlier confrontation. Either way, I finished packing in silence, zipped the bag shut, and slung it over my shoulder. When I walked back through the living room, she looked up at me, her lips parting as if she wanted to say something. But no words came. I didn't wait for them. I just walked out the door, letting it close behind me with a finality that echoed in my chest. The motel room was a stark contrast to the home I'd just left. The walls were a dull beige, the carpet stained and worn. A single lamp cast a weak, flickering light over the room, barely illuminating the faded floral bedspread. I dropped my bag by the door and sat on the edge of the bed, the mattress sagging under my weight. For a long time, I just sat there, staring at the blank wall in front of me, trying to make sense of everything. How had it come to this? How had we gone from vows and promises to lies and betrayal? The questions swirled in my mind, each one sharper than the last, cutting through the numbness and leaving a raw, aching wound. The anger came first, hot and all-consuming. My fists clenched at my sides, my nails digging into my palms as I fought the urge to scream, to throw something, to lash out at the world for letting this happen. It felt like my chest was on fire, the flames fueled by every memory, every lie, every moment I'd missed. But anger burns fast, and when it was gone, all that was left was the crushing weight of sadness. I leaned forward, resting my elbows on my knees, my head in my hands. The silence in the room was deafening, amplifying the ache in my chest. Memories flooded my mind, unbidden and relentless. I thought about the way she used to look at me, her eyes filled with warmth and love. I thought about our wedding day, the vows we made, the promises we swore to keep. I thought about the little moments, the way her hand used to slip into mine when we walked together, the way her laugh used to fill the room. Each memory was a dagger, sharp and cold, cutting deeper than the last. Trust, love, partnership, it was all a lie. How long had it been falling apart without me noticing? How many times had she looked me in the eyes, kissed me, told me she loved me, while hiding this? And then the guilt came, twisting in my gut like a knife. I sat there, replaying every moment I could think of, wondering what I missed. Could I have done something differently? Was I too distracted, too wrapped up in work or my own life, to see what was happening? Did I push her away without realizing it? The spiral of self-blame pulled me deeper, dragging me down until it felt like I couldn't breathe. I pressed my hands to my face, trying to hold myself together, but the weight of it all was crushing. But then, somewhere in the chaos, a small voice cut through. "This isn't your fault." I let the words settle, repeating them in my mind until they felt real. I didn't make her cheat. I didn't make her lie. Whatever mistakes I might have made in our marriage, this wasn't one of them. This was her choice. Her betrayal. The realization didn't bring relief, but it brought clarity. I wasn't responsible for this. I wasn't the one who shattered our life together. I looked around the room, at the chipped paint and the faintly flickering lamp. The world outside the window was calm, cars passing in the distance, the faint hum of an air conditioner. It was such a stark contrast to the storm raging inside me. And yet, in that moment, something shifted. It wasn't forgiveness or acceptance. I wasn't there yet, and I didn't know if I ever would be. But it was a promise. To myself. I'd move forward. I'd heal. This wasn't going to destroy me, not completely. I sat there for a long time, staring at the wall, the silence stretching endlessly. The ache in my chest was still there, and my mind was still racing, but for the first time all day, I felt a sliver of resolve. I didn't know what the future would look like, but I knew one thing for certain. I couldn't go back. As I lay down on the stiff motel bed, my phone buzzed on the nightstand. I picked it up, expecting another message from her, another plea for forgiveness. But it wasn't her. It was an unknown number. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it. "We need to talk. It's about your wife." The screen went dark, but the words lingered, sharp and unrelenting. I stared at my phone, my breath catching in my throat. This wasn't over. Not even close. And whoever was on the other end of that message knew more than I did. I clenched my phone tighter, the cold reality of the situation settling over me. The game had changed. And I was no longer just a player, I was the target. When I woke up in the dim, sterile motel room, the weight of my decision pressed down on me like a second skin. There was no hesitation, no second guessing. The marriage was over, and I wasn't going to waste another moment clinging to something that had already crumbled. The first call I made was to a lawyer. My voice was steady as I laid out the facts. The infidelity, the evidence, the cold, hard truth that there was no coming back from this. The lawyer listened, asked a few clarifying questions, and assured me the process would move quickly. By the time I hung up, the wheels were already in motion. Next, I opened my laptop and began dismantling the life we'd built together. I froze our joint accounts, ensuring she couldn't drain them before the divorce was finalized. I canceled shared subscriptions, changed passwords, and blocked her access to every service we'd once used together. Each action felt like cutting a cord, severing the ties that had bound us for so long. And then, almost without thinking, I picked up my phone and sent a message to him. To Kyle. She's free now. You don't have to wait for your next meeting. She's all yours. The response came almost instantly, a single line that hit me like a punch to the gut. Keep her. I stared at the screen, my mind reeling. The words echoed in my head, sharp and unrelenting. He didn't want her. He never had, not beyond a fleeting affair, a momentary distraction. She had thrown away everything, our marriage, our life together, for a man who couldn't even be bothered to take her seriously. I dropped the phone onto the bed and leaned back, staring up at the cracked ceiling. There was no satisfaction in this, no sense of vindication. Just a hollow, sinking realization. She wasn't just unfaithful, she was utterly alone. As the morning light filtered through the blinds, I found myself reflecting on how we'd gotten here. Trust had been the foundation of our relationship, the glue that held everything together. Without it, no amount of love, history, or shared dreams could sustain us. I'd always believed that love was enough, but now I knew better. Ending the marriage wasn't just about her betrayal, it was about self-preservation. Staying would have meant sacrificing my dignity, my peace of mind, and my future. Walking away wasn't easy, but it was necessary. I spent the rest of the day methodically untangling the remnants of our shared life. I forwarded my mail to the motel's address, contacted utility companies, and made arrangements to remove my name from the lease. Blocking her on social media was the final step, and while it felt cathartic, it also left a lingering sadness. Each click, each task, was a reminder of what had been lost. The nights were the hardest. Alone in the quiet of the motel room, memories played on a loop in my mind. I relived the good moments, our laughter, our plans, the times I thought we were invincible. And then the betrayal would crash over me, drowning any warmth those memories held. Thankfully, I wasn't completely alone. Friends stepped in, offering their unwavering support. They let me vent, distracted me with late-night phone calls, and reminded me that this pain wouldn't last forever. Their encouragement was a lifeline, pulling me back from the abyss when the nights felt endless. Through the pain, I found clarity. I learned that trust is the cornerstone of any relationship, and without it, nothing else matters. I learned that staying in a toxic situation doesn't make you strong, it makes you stuck. And I learned that leaving isn't a failure, it's an act of self-respect. This experience has left scars, but those scars carry lessons I won't forget. I know my worth now. I know that I deserve honesty, loyalty, and partnership. And I know that walking away from something broken is the first step toward finding something whole. The pain is still there, but it's quieter now, dulled by time and hope. This isn't the end of my story, it's just the end of a chapter. I don't know what comes next, but for the first time in a long time, I'm looking forward to finding out. As I sat there, the motel room silent except for the hum of the air conditioner, my phone buzzed again. I glanced at the screen, expecting another message from a friend or maybe even the lawyer. But it wasn't either of them. It was her. "We need to talk," the message read. "It's not what you think." I stared at the words, my heart pounding in my chest. What could she possibly have to say? What explanation could she offer that would change anything? Before I could respond, another message came through. "There's something you don't know." The screen went dark, but the words lingered, sharp and unrelenting. I clenched my phone tighter, the cold reality of the situation settling over me. This wasn't over. Not even close. And whatever she was about to tell me, I knew one thing for certain. It was going to change everything.